Everyone at my company knew my wife was sleeping with my coworker, except me. When I finally found out, I made sure they all watched her world collapse. I thought I knew my workplace. After 8 years at Summit Logistics, I knew who took 2 sugars in their coffee, who was always 10 minutes late, who could fix the temperamental printer, and who to avoid on Monday mornings. I managed a team of 15 people, knew their work styles, their strengths, their weaknesses. I thought I had my finger on the pulse of that office. Turns out everyone in that building knew something about my life that I didn't know. Something that made me the subject of their gossip, their pity, their awkward glances. They all knew my wife was sleeping with one of my employees. Everyone except me. Hey Reddit, this is the story of how I discovered my wife's affair was the worst kept secret at my company, and how I made sure that when I finally confronted it, everyone who'd whispered behind my back got a front row seat to the consequences. I'm Ryan, 34 years old, and what I'm about to tell you will make you question whether the people you work with every day are actually on your side. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and the conversation suddenly stops? When people exchange glances that clearly mean something, but you're not privy to what? I'd been experiencing that for months at work without understanding why. The whispers, the awkward silences, the sympathetic looks I couldn't quite interpret. I thought maybe there were layoffs coming, or office politics I wasn't aware of, or some drama that didn't involve me. I was so catastrophically wrong. Let me start from the beginning, because to understand how completely I was blindsided, you need to understand what my marriage looked like and how my wife became part of my workplace culture. I met Melissa 8 years ago when I was 26 and she was 24. I was working as a logistics coordinator at Summit Logistics, making about $52,000 a year. Melissa was finishing her graphic design degree and working freelance jobs to build her portfolio. We met through a mutual friend's game night, connected over our shared love of hiking and travel photography, and started dating within a month. Melissa was creative, spontaneous, fun. Where I was analytical and structured, necessary traits for logistics work, she was artistic and free-spirited. She'd show me design projects she was working on, logos and branding packages for small businesses, and I'd be amazed by her talent and creativity. She made my structured, routine-focused life feel more vibrant. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. By then, I'd been promoted to operations coordinator, making $68,000, and Melissa was building a solid freelance design business, making around $45,000 annually. We got married when I was 28 and she was 26. Small ceremony, about 80 guests, focused more on the marriage than the wedding spectacle. The first few years were genuinely good. We both worked from home sometimes. Melissa's freelance work was entirely remote, and I could do administrative tasks from home when I wasn't needed on site at the distribution centers we managed. We'd have lunch together, take afternoon walks. Felt like we were building a partnership. When I was 30, I got promoted to operations manager. Significant jump, $85,000 salary, management responsibilities over a team of 15 people, an office instead of a cubicle. I was proud of the promotion, excited about the opportunity, and Melissa seemed happy for me. "We should celebrate," she said when I told her about the promotion. "Let me take you to lunch at your office. I want to see your fancy new manager's office." She came by that first week, brought sandwiches from my favorite deli, sat in my office for an hour while I showed her the organizational charts and explained my new responsibilities. Some of my team members walked by, and I introduced her. "This is my wife, Melissa. She's a graphic designer. If any of you need branding work, she's incredible." They were friendly, welcoming. Derek, one of my account coordinators, 27 at the time, stuck his head in to say hello. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Ryan. Love your jacket. That's a great color on you." Melissa smiled. "Thank you, and please call me Melissa. Mrs. Ryan makes me sound old." They laughed. It was a pleasant, completely unremarkable interaction. The kind of friendly exchange that happens when coworkers meet spouses. I thought nothing of it. Melissa started coming by the office occasionally after that. Once or twice a month, she'd bring me lunch. We'd eat in my office or the break room. She'd chat with whoever was around. I liked having her there. It humanized me as a manager, showed my team I had a life outside of work, and frankly, it was nice to see my wife during the workday. She got to know people, learned names, remembered details about their lives, would ask follow-up questions. "How was your daughter's soccer tournament?" To Tom. "Did you finish that certification course?" To Sarah. She was genuinely interested in my co-workers as people, and they responded warmly to her. Derek, in particular, seemed to enjoy talking to Melissa. He was single, personable, good at his job, but sometimes a little too eager to please. The kind of employee who'd volunteer for extra projects to prove his worth. When Melissa was in the office, Derek would often join whatever conversation was happening in the break room, making jokes, asking about her design work, showing interest in her projects. "Your wife is really cool," Derek told me once after she'd left. "You're lucky. I know I am, I responded, appreciating what I thought was a compliment about my marriage. Looking back now, I see that interaction differently. Was Derek fishing for information, testing boundaries, starting something even then? I'll never know for sure, but it haunts me. 2 years ago, when I was 32, I took on additional responsibilities managing logistics for 3 new distribution centers. The promotion came with a salary increase to $95,000, but also significantly more work. I was traveling more, site visits to the distribution centers, meetings with regional managers, client presentation, usually 1 or 2 overnight trips per month, sometimes more during busy seasons. Melissa was supportive. I'm proud of you. This is what you've been working toward. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. I have my design work to keep me busy. The increased travel meant Melissa was alone more. I felt guilty about that, but she insisted she understood. It's your career. We'll make it work. Around that same time, Derek was going through a breakup. He'd been dating someone for 2 years, and when she ended it, he was genuinely distraught. Took a few days off work, came back subdued and clearly struggling. I tried to be supportive as his manager. If you need anything, let me know. If your work suffers temporarily, I understand. Take care of yourself. Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate that. Melissa was sympathetic when I mentioned Derek's breakup. That's so sad. He seemed like such a sweet guy. Is he okay? He's struggling, but managing. I'm keeping an eye on him. If he needs someone to talk to outside of work, I'm happy to grab coffee with him or something. Sometimes it helps to talk to someone who's not a coworker. I thought that was kind of her. Generous, even. My wife offering to be supportive to one of my employees who was going through a hard time. Nothing inappropriate about it, just human compassion. That's sweet of you. I'll mention it if it seems like he needs that. I never did mention it directly, but somehow, over the next few months, Melissa and Derek developed a friendship. I'd see them talking in the parking lot when she came by the office. She'd mentioned conversations they'd had. Derek told me about this great hiking trail. Or Derek recommended a new coffee shop I should check. I didn't think anything of it. Melissa was friendly. Derek was my employee and a decent guy. They were both around the same age, had some similar interests, and my wife being friendly with my coworkers seemed like a positive thing. But about a year ago, I started noticing small things that, in isolation, meant nothing, but in aggregate, formed a pattern I should have recognized. Derek started requesting schedule changes that coincided with my travel days. Hey Ryan, can I work from home on Thursday? I have some appointments. Thursday was when I'd be at the Cincinnati Distribution Center. Or, can I take Friday afternoon off? I need to handle some personal things. Friday afternoon when I'd be driving back from Louisville and wouldn't be in the office. I approved these requests. I was a flexible manager, and Derek's work was generally good. But looking back, the pattern was obvious. He was arranging to be out of the office or working remotely, specifically on days I wouldn't be around. Melissa became increasingly interested in my travel schedule. When are you going to Cincinnati again? Or how long will you be in Louisville this time? She'd never been particularly interested in the details of my business travel before, but suddenly she wanted to know exact dates, exact times I'd be leaving and returning. Why do you need to know? I asked once. Just planning my week. Want to know when I'll have the house to myself so I can schedule client calls without interrupting you. It made sense. Melissa often took client video calls, and having the house quiet was helpful for her work. I thought nothing of it. I started noticing that Melissa seemed happier, more energetic, more engaged, but not with me. She'd be glowing after I returned from a business trip, talking animatedly about projects she'd worked on, people she'd seen, things she'd done. But when I tried to connect with her, tried to be intimate, tried to have deep conversations, she was distant and distracted. What's going on with us? I asked about 6 months ago. I feel like we're disconnected. We're fine, Ryan. You're just tired from work. We're both busy. That's normal for this stage of life. But I miss you. I miss us. We barely talk anymore. We're not intimate. I feel like roommates rather than spouses. You're overthinking it. We're fine. Stop trying to create problems where there aren't any. She dismissed my concerns so easily, made me feel like I was manufacturing issues. So I dropped it and tried to be less needy, less demanding of her time and attention. At work, I started noticing weird dynamics I couldn't quite understand. Conversations that would stop abruptly when I entered a room. Glances exchanged between team members that seemed to have meaning I wasn't privy to. Awkward silences when I'd mention my wife or my travel schedule. One afternoon, I walked into the break room and found 3 of my team members, Sarah, Tom, and Jennifer, talking in hushed tones. The moment I entered, they stopped talking and looked at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Sympathy? Pity? Discomfort? What's going on? I asked. Nothing, Sarah said quickly. Just chatting. Sounded pretty intense for just chatting. Just office gossip, Tom added. Nothing important. They scattered, leaving me alone in the break room feeling confused and slightly paranoid. What office gossip could possibly cause that reaction when I entered? Another time, I overheard 2 employees from a different department talking near my office. I wasn't intentionally eavesdropping. I was working at my desk with the door open and their voices carried. "I can't believe everyone knows except him," one voice said. "I know. It's so awkward. Should someone tell him? Not my place, but it's painful to watch." At this point, it's just sad. They walked away before I could process what they'd said or who they'd been talking about. I assumed it was about some other workplace drama, some other employee's personal situation. It never occurred to me they were talking about me. Derek's behavior toward me changed subtly. He was still professional, still competent, but there was a weird undercurrent I couldn't identify. Sometimes he seemed almost guilty around me, avoiding eye contact, being extra helpful as though trying to compensate for something. Other times, he seemed almost smug, like he knew something I didn't. When I'd mentioned Melissa at work, "My wife and I went hiking this weekend," or "Melissa's working on a big branding project," I'd noticed people's reactions. Some would smile tightly and change the subject. Others would exchange those glances again, that look that clearly communicated something I wasn't understanding. 3 months ago, Melissa suggested we host a barbecue. "We should have people over. Your coworkers, some of our friends. We never socialize anymore." "That's a good idea. I'll invite the team." We hosted the barbecue on a Saturday. About 20 people came, most of my team, some of Melissa's design colleagues, a few mutual friends. It should have been fun, a nice social gathering that strengthened workplace relationships. But I noticed things. Derek and Melissa talked a lot. Not inappropriately. They weren't off alone or being physically affectionate, but they were just very comfortable with each other. Lots of inside jokes, lots of shared laughter, a familiarity that seemed to go beyond the occasional parking lot conversations I'd witnessed. "You two seem to get along really well," I commented to Melissa after most guests had left and Derek was helping carry dishes inside. "He's nice, easy to talk to. Is that a problem?" "No, not a problem. Just an observation. You're the one who wanted me to be friendly with your coworkers. Now you're bothered by it?" Again, she turned it around on me, made my observation seem like unreasonable jealousy. I apologized and dropped it. 2 months ago, I had a business trip to Louisville scheduled for 2 days. I left Tuesday morning, planning to return Wednesday evening. The site visit went well, meetings were productive, everything was on schedule. Wednesday afternoon, I got a text from the client. "One of our team members is sick. Can we reschedule tomorrow's meeting to today? We'd like to close this deal ASAP." I called my boss, explained the situation, got approval to cancel the Thursday plans and stay an extra night to accommodate the client. This was a major contract, worth doing whatever was necessary to secure it. I texted Melissa, "Client wants to meet today instead of tomorrow. Staying extra night. We'll be home Thursday evening instead of Wednesday." She responded, "Okay." That was it. Just okay. No "hope the meeting goes well" or "miss you" or any of the normal responses she might have given. Just acknowledgement that my schedule had changed. The meeting went great. We secured the contract. I was pleased, texted Melissa the good news. She responded, "That's great. Congrats." Still oddly flat, but I was busy celebrating with colleagues and didn't think much of it. Thursday morning, I woke up to a text from my boss. "Client just called. They're actually fine with the original timeline. You can head back today if you want. Take tomorrow off as comp time for the extra travel." I was thrilled. Meant I could get home Thursday morning instead of Thursday evening, have a long weekend, surprise Melissa with the good news. I packed up, checked out of the hotel, and started the 3-hour drive home. Didn't text Melissa, figured I'd surprise her. Show up early, maybe take her to a nice lunch, spend quality time together. I got home around 11 a.m. Her car was in the driveway, which was normal. She usually worked from home on Thursdays. I walked in quietly, not wanting to startle her if she was on a client call. The house was quiet. I set my bag down in the entryway, walked toward the kitchen. No sign of Melissa. Maybe she was in her home office upstairs. I was about to call out for her when my phone buzzed. Text from Sarah, one of my employees. "Ryan, are you back in town? Need to discuss something about the Johnson account." I responded, "Just got home. We'll be in the office tomorrow. Can it wait?" Her response was immediate. "Yes. Actually, maybe we should talk today if you have time. Can you come to the office for a few minutes?" That was unusual. Sarah wasn't typically urgent about things that could wait until the next day, but she was my most reliable employee, so if she thought something needed immediate attention, it probably did. I texted back, "Give me an hour. Need to catch up with Melissa, then I'll head over." I walked upstairs to Melissa's office. Door was closed. I knocked lightly. "Melissa, I'm home early. The client changed." The door opened. Melissa stood there looking shocked. "Ryan, what are you doing home? Client changed the schedule. I got to leave this morning instead of tonight. Surprise!" She didn't look happy to see me. She looked panicked. "You should have texted. I'm in the middle of a client call." "Sorry, I wanted to surprise you. I can wait downstairs until you're done." "Actually, I need to go out. I have a meeting. An in-person meeting with a potential client. Now, it's 11 a.m. on a Thursday. Yes, now. They're only available at noon. I need to get ready and leave." Something in her tone felt off. Rushed, defensive, but I was tired from driving and didn't want to argue. Okay, well, I'm going to the office for a bit. Sarah needs to discuss something. Want to have dinner together tonight? We can celebrate the contract I closed. Sure, yeah, dinner. I'll text you later. She practically pushed me out of her office, closed the door, and I heard her on the phone immediately. Low, urgent tones I couldn't make out. I shrugged it off. Melissa had been stressed about landing new clients. Made sense she'd be focused on a potential business meeting. I drove to the office, arriving around 11:30 a.m. The parking lot was moderately full. Thursday was one of our busier days because we coordinated weekend logistics with clients. I parked and walked toward the building. As I approached, I noticed a car I recognized in the visitor section. Melissa's white SUV, the distinctive bumper sticker she designed herself, her personal logo. My first thought was confusion. Melissa said she had a meeting with a potential client. Why would she be at my office for that meeting? Unless maybe the potential client worked at Summit Logistics and that's why she was meeting them here? I walked into the building, waved at reception, headed toward my department. Walked past conference rooms, seeing the usual Thursday meetings in progress. Logistics coordinators reviewing shipping schedules. Account managers on client calls. Then I saw conference room C. The glass walls gave a clear view inside. And there, sitting very close together on one side of the table, was Melissa and Derek. Not in a meeting posture, not reviewing documents or presentations. Sitting close together, Derek's hand over Melissa's hand on the table, their heads tilted toward each other in intimate conversation. Everything stopped. Sound faded, time stretched. I stood in that hallway, staring through the glass at my wife and my employee, and the entire puzzle suddenly assembled itself with devastating clarity. The schedule changes Derek requested on my travel days. Melissa's questions about my exact travel schedule. Her happiness and energy that wasn't directed at me. The whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. The sympathetic glances from my co-workers. The comment I'd overheard. I can't believe everyone knows except him. Everyone knew. Everyone at my company knew my wife was having an affair with Derek. They'd watched it develop. They'd whispered about it. They'd felt sorry for me. And no one had told me. I pushed open the conference room door. They jumped apart, faces going pale. Ryan, Melissa gasped. What are you? Don't. My voice came out cold, flat. Don't insult me by pretending this is something else. Derek stood up, hands raised. Ryan, man, I can explain. Explain what? Explain why you're holding my wife's hand in a conference room at my workplace? Explain why you've been requesting time off on days I travel? Explain why everyone in this fucking building apparently knew about this except me? Tears started streaming down Melissa's face. Ryan, please, let's go somewhere private. Private? Private? You've been having an affair at my workplace, in my building, with my employee, and you want privacy? People were gathering in the hallway now, drawn by the raised voices. I could see faces pressed against the glass. My team, my coworkers, all of them watching the humiliating scene they'd known was inevitable. Sarah appeared at my side. Ryan, come on, let's go to your office. I let her guide me away, but I looked back at Melissa and Derek, both standing there looking devastated and guilty and terrified. Everyone knew, I said to Sarah as we walked. That's what you wanted to talk to me about, wasn't it? You were trying to warn me. I'm so sorry, she said quietly. We didn't know how to tell you. We thought you knew, and we're just dealing with it privately. In my office, I sat down heavily. Sarah closed the door, giving me privacy from the spectacle in the hallway. How long? I asked. Ryan, how long, Sarah? How long has this been going on, and how long has everyone known about it? She looked miserable. At least 6 months, maybe longer. They've been careful, but people talk. People noticed, and everyone assumed you knew because how could you not? Your wife coming to the office, Derek's schedule changes, the way they look at each other. We thought you were aware and choosing to ignore it or work through it privately. 6 months. My wife had been cheating on me for at least 6 months with my employee in my workplace, and everyone I worked with knew about it. I wasn't just a betrayed husband. I was a humiliated manager who couldn't even see what was happening in his own building, with his own team, involving his own wife. The rage and hurt and humiliation crashed over me in waves. I put my head in my hands, trying to process the magnitude of what had just been revealed. My marriage was over, obviously. But this wasn't just a marriage ending. This was my professional reputation destroyed, my authority undermined, my credibility shattered. How could I manage a team that had been gossiping about my personal life? How could I maintain respect when everyone knew I'd been the last to know about my own wife's affair? Sarah stood awkwardly by the door. What do you need? I need everyone to leave me alone. I need to think. She nodded and left. Through the glass wall of my office, I could see activity in the hallway. Melissa trying to approach my office, being stopped by Tom, Derek nowhere visible. Coworkers whispering, glancing at my office, the gossip spreading in real time. My phone buzzed. Text from Melissa. Please let me explain. Please. I didn't respond. There was nothing to explain. I'd seen enough. I sat in my office for an hour, mind racing through everything. The betrayal, the humiliation, the months of lies, the workplace dynamics that would now be impossible to navigate. The damage to my marriage and my career simultaneously. And slowly, through the devastation and pain, something else emerged. Cold, calculated fury, a determination that if my marriage was ending and my reputation was damaged, then Melissa and Derek would face consequences beyond just my personal anger. They'd made this public by conducting their affair at my workplace. They'd involved my entire team by being so careless that everyone noticed. They'd humiliated me in the most professional setting in my life. Fine. Then the consequences would be equally public and equally professional. I opened my laptop and started making a plan. I sat in my office for 2 hours, door closed, blinds drawn, planning my next move with the same methodical precision I applied to logistics operations. This wasn't just a marriage ending. This was a workplace ethics violation, a breach of professional boundaries, and a humiliation that had been conducted with the knowledge and complicity of my entire team. If they wanted to make this public by conducting their affair in my workplace, then the consequences would be equally public and equally devastating. First, I needed evidence. Comprehensive, irrefutable evidence that would hold up in divorce proceedings and workplace misconduct investigations. I opened my computer and accessed the building security system. As operations manager, I had administrative access to review footage for operational purposes, monitoring deliveries, investigating incidents, reviewing workplace safety issues. What I was about to do fell into a gray area, but given that the affair was conducted on company property during work hours, I felt justified. I started with the past month, reviewing footage from conference room C where I just caught them. I fast-forwarded through hours of normal meetings until I found what I was looking for. Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, 11:47 a.m. Derek entered conference room C. 3 minutes later, Melissa entered. They sat close together, talking, laughing. At 12:15 p.m., Derek stood up, closed the blinds. The camera only showed shadows after that, but the implications were clear. They stayed in that room until 2:30 p.m., nearly 3 hours. I checked my calendar for that day. I'd been at the Cincinnati Distribution Center, out of the office, just like Melissa knew I would be. I went back further, found more instances. Conference room C seemed to be their preferred location, but I also found footage of them in the parking lot, sitting in Derek's car for extended periods. Footage of them leaving the building together, returning separately 30 minutes apart. Footage of Melissa arriving at the office on days she told me she was working from home. I compiled every instance I could find over the past 6 months. 17 separate occasions where they'd met at my workplace, always when I was traveling or out of the office. 17 times they'd used my building, my conference rooms, my parking lot to conduct their affair. I saved all the footage to an encrypted drive, time-stamped, dated, irrefutable. Next, I accessed the company's internal communication system. We used Microsoft Teams for work chat, and as a manager with HR clearance for investigating workplace issues, I had access to review chat logs when necessary for company purposes. I searched for Derek's name in various group chats, found the first damning evidence in a chat called Break Room Crew, 6 of my team members who all together. Jennifer. Did anyone else see Derek and Ryan's wife in the parking lot again? They were sitting in his car for like 45 minutes. Tom. Yup, this is getting so obvious. How does Ryan not know? Sarah. Maybe he does know and is just dealing with it privately. Some couples have arrangements. Jennifer. I don't think he knows. He seems completely clueless. It's actually painful to watch. Mike. Should someone tell him? Tom. Not my circus, not my monkeys. I'm staying out of it. Jennifer. Poor Ryan, though. Everyone can see what's happening except him. The date on that chat was 4 months ago. 4 months ago, my team was discussing my wife's affair in a group chat, pitying me, and no one thought to tell me. I kept searching, found more chats. Sarah. Derek just requested another schedule change for Thursday. That's the 3rd time this month on days Ryan is traveling. Tom. Wonder why? Sarah. This is so messy. I can't believe it's still going on. Mike. HR is going to have a field day when this comes out. Another chat 3 months ago. Jennifer. Saw Melissa in conference room C again today. Derek was in there with the door closed. They're not even being subtle anymore. Tom. At this point, I think everyone in the building knows except Ryan. Mike. This is the most uncomfortable workplace situation I've ever been in. Do we all just keep pretending we don't notice? Sarah. What choice do we have? It's not our place to get involved in someone's marriage. I read through dozens of messages. My team had been discussing this for months, commenting on it, feeling uncomfortable about it, pitying me. And not one of them had pulled me aside to tell me what was happening. The humiliation was overwhelming, but it was also fuel for what I was about to do. I saved all the chat logs, compiled them into a document with dates, participants, and context. By the time I finished, it was 6 p.m. I'd spent 7 hours in my office, door closed, compiling evidence of my wife's affair and my team's complicity in keeping it from. I had 17 security camera incidents. I had dozens of chat logs. I had Derek's suspicious schedule change requests. I had a timeline that painted an absolutely clear picture of a months-long affair conducted brazenly at my workplace with everyone's knowledge. I called my attorney, not a divorce attorney yet, but the family lawyer I'd used when we bought our house, explained the situation. He referred me to Patricia Donovan, a divorce attorney known for handling high-conflict cases. I called Patricia immediately. I need an emergency consultation. I discovered my wife's affair today. It's been going on at my workplace with my employee, and I have extensive documentation. Can you come in tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.? I'll be there. Then I called Summit Logistics HR, Director Marcia Chen. We'd worked together for years. She'd been involved in my promotions and was generally reasonable and professional. Marcia, I need to report a serious workplace ethics issue. Can we meet tomorrow? Of course, Ryan. What's this regarding? I'd prefer to discuss it in person with full documentation. It involves a relationship between an employee and a manager's spouse that's been conducted on company property and has created a hostile work environment. Her tone shifted to serious. I'll clear my schedule. 10 a.m. tomorrow? Perfect. I drove home that night in a daze. Melissa's car wasn't in the driveway. She'd texted multiple times asking to talk, but I'd ignored all messages. I assumed she was staying with a friend or her parents. I walked into our house, looked around at the life we'd built together, and felt nothing. Just cold determination to handle this strategically. The next morning, I met with Patricia Donovan at 9 a.m., showed her everything, the security footage, the chat logs, the timeline. Her expression remained professionally neutral, but I could see the anger in her eyes on my behalf. This is one of the most well-documented affairs I've seen. The workplace component adds complications, but it also gives you leverage. Your wife conducted this affair using your workplace resources, causing professional harm to you, and creating documented humiliation. That's relevant in divorce proceedings. What do I do? File immediately. Seek fault-based divorce citing adultery. The evidence is overwhelming. In terms of asset division, you're entitled to a double split, but the circumstances may favor you. Any children? No. That simplifies things. How do you want to proceed? I want to file this week. I want Melissa served immediately. And I want this handled in a way that makes clear what she did and why the marriage is ending. I'll prepare the paperwork today. You can be served by Friday. At 10 a.m., I met with Marcia in HR. Presented the same evidence, security footage, chat logs, Derek's schedule changes. Her face went progressively more serious as she reviewed everything. Ryan, I'm so sorry this happened. This is clearly a violation of our workplace ethics policy. Derek engaged in conduct that compromised the workplace environment, used company resources for personal activities, and created an inappropriate relationship with a manager's spouse. What are the consequences? Based on this evidence, Derek will be terminated. This is clear misconduct. We'll also need to address the fact that multiple employees were aware and didn't report it, but that's a secondary issue. I want to be the one to tell him, in front of the team. Marcia hesitated. That's unusual. Typically, HR handles terminations privately. This wasn't a private affair. Everyone knew. It was discussed in group chats, witnessed by multiple employees, and conducted openly at our workplace. The termination shouldn't be private either. My team needs to see that there are consequences for this behavior. And frankly, I need them to understand the magnitude of what happened. I understand your reasoning. Let me consult with legal. This is a unique situation that may justify a unique approach. By Wednesday, everything was in motion. Patricia had prepared divorce papers. Marcia had gotten approval for a termination process. Derek would be terminated at a mandatory team meeting where the evidence would be presented, though Marcia would deliver the actual termination decision to protect the company legally. I scheduled a mandatory team meeting for Friday at 2 p.m. Subject line, Workplace Conduct Review and Policy Updates. Attendance required for all 15 members of my team, plus HR and my boss, Michael. I also did something calculated. I texted Melissa, we need to talk. Can you come to my office Friday at 2 p.m.? I want to discuss how we move forward. She responded immediately. Yes, thank you. I'll be there. I love you. I didn't respond to the I love you. Just confirmed. Friday, 2 p.m. Conference Room A. Conference Room A was our largest conference room, the one we used for major team meetings. It had a projector setup, seating for 20, and full glass walls so anyone in the hallway could see inside. Friday arrived. I came to work early, rehearsed what I'd say, reviewed my evidence one more time. I was calm, determined, ready. At 1:45 p.m., my team started gathering in Conference Room A. Confused about the mandatory meeting, exchanging nervous glances, Derek arrived at 1:50 p.m. looking terrified. He knew something was wrong. At 1:55 p.m., Melissa arrived, walked into the building, smiled nervously at reception, headed toward Conference Room A. She was wearing a nice dress, had clearly put effort into her appearance. Probably thought we were having a reconciliation conversation. She walked into the conference room and froze. Saw the full team. Saw Marcia from HR. Saw my boss Michael. Saw Derek sitting at the far end of the table, face pale. "Ryan?" she asked, confused. "What's going on?" "Please sit," I said, gesturing to an empty chair. "This involves you." She sat slowly, looking around the room with growing anxiety. At 2 p.m. exactly, I stood up, closed the conference room door, connected my laptop to the projector. "Thank you all for being here. This is going to be an uncomfortable meeting, but it's necessary. We're here to address a serious workplace ethics violation that's been ongoing for months and has affected our entire team environment." I looked at each person in the room, my team members avoiding eye contact, Derek staring at the table, Melissa's face showing dawning horror as she realized what was happening. 6 months ago, my wife Melissa and my employee Derek began an affair. They conducted this affair primarily at our workplace, using our conference rooms, our parking lot, and company time. They met on days when I was traveling, when they thought they wouldn't be caught. I clicked to the first slide. Security camera footage, time-stamped, showing Derek and Melissa entering conference room C. This is from 6 months ago. The first instance I found in security footage. They met for 3 hours while I was in Cincinnati on business. Next slide. Chat logs from break room crew. These are internal chat logs where team members discuss the affair, express discomfort with the situation, and acknowledge that everyone knew except me. Melissa was crying now. Derek had his head in his hands. My team members looked mortified, some because of the affair, others because their chat messages were being displayed. I discovered this affair on Thursday when I returned from Louisville early and found them together in conference room C. What I've learned since then is that this wasn't a secret. It was openly discussed, widely known, and deliberately concealed from me by nearly everyone in this room. I looked at Sarah, Tom, Jennifer, Mike. You all knew, for months. You discussed it in group chats. You witnessed it. You felt sorry for me, but not one of you thought to pull me aside and tell me the truth. Sarah was crying. Tom was staring at his hands. The guilt in the room was palpable. This meeting has 3 purposes. First, to make clear that this behavior is unacceptable and has consequences. Second, to address the team dynamics that allowed this to continue without intervention. And third, to ensure everyone understands the full impact of what happened here. I nodded to Marcia. She stood up, opened a folder. Derek Patterson, based on the evidence presented and after consultation with company legal counsel, your employment with Summit Logistics is terminated effective immediately. You violated company ethics policies by conducting a personal relationship on company property during work hours, used company resources inappropriately, and created a hostile work environment. Please collect your belongings and the premises. Derek stood shakily, looked at me. "Ryan, I don't." My voice was ice. "Just leave." He left, walked out of the conference room, down the hallway toward his desk to collect his things, escorted by security that Marcia had already arranged. Then I turned to Melissa. "I've filed for divorce. You'll be served with papers this evening. I have extensive documentation of your affair, including the security footage and communications evidence. I'm seeking a fault-based divorce citing adultery. My attorney is confident we'll reach a favorable settlement given the circumstances." "Ryan, please," she sobbed. "You made this public by conducting your affair at my workplace. You involved my entire team by being so careless that everyone noticed. You humiliated me professionally and personally. These are the consequences." I looked at my team. "As for the rest of you, I'm deeply disappointed that no one had the courage or integrity to tell me what was happening. You all witnessed my humiliation and chose to gossip about it rather than address it. That's something you'll each need to reflect on." Michael, my boss, spoke up. "Ryan, I want to acknowledge that this is an incredibly difficult situation, and you've handled it with remarkable professionalism. We'll be conducting individual meetings with team members to address the workplace culture issues that allowed this to continue." The meeting ended. Melissa ran out of the conference room, humiliated beyond words. My team dispersed silently, carrying the weight of their complicity. I stayed in that conference room for a few minutes, processing what I'd just done. The public confrontation, the termination, the exposure of everyone's role in keeping the secret. It felt brutal, harsh, maybe even cruel, but it also felt necessary. They'd made my personal life their entertainment. They'd whispered about me while smiling to my face. They'd participated in my humiliation through their silence. Now they understood there were consequences. The next 6 months were difficult. Divorce proceedings, therapy to process the betrayal, rebuilding my professional reputation, navigating a team that was deeply shaken by what had happened. But there were also unexpected positives. The divorce settlement was heavily in my favor. Melissa had no defense against the adultery evidence. We split assets equitably, but she received no alimony and had to pay her own legal fees. Derek was essentially blacklisted in our industry. Word spread about why he'd been terminated, and his professional reputation was destroyed. My team, after the initial shock, became more respectful and honest. The culture shifted. People communicated more directly, the whisper networks and gossip dynamics diminished, and my boss Michael promoted me to Regional Operations Director 6 months after the incident. You handled an impossible situation with strategic thinking and professionalism. That's the kind of leadership we need at the regional level. 1 year after discovering the affair, I was 35, single, focused on my career, and slowly rebuilding my personal life. I'd moved into a new apartment, started dating occasionally, reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my marriage. Melissa reached out a few times, wanting to explain, to apologize, to get closure. I never responded. There was nothing she could say that would change what had happened or how I felt about it. Derek, I heard through the industry grapevine, had moved to another state and was working in a different field entirely. Couldn't find logistics work after the termination became known. 2 years after the divorce, I met someone new. Catherine was a project manager at a client company, intelligent and straightforward and completely different from Melissa. When I told her about my divorce, she was understanding but clear. Infidelity is a deal breaker for me. If someone can lie to your face while sleeping with someone else, they're capable of anything. You were right to end it decisively. 3 years later, Catherine and I got engaged. Small ceremony, just close friends and family, focused on the commitment rather than the spectacle. My team, from that horrible Friday, most of them are still at Summit Logistics. We've never directly discussed what happened, but the dynamic is different now. More honest, more respectful. They saw what happens when secrets are kept and consequences are avoided. 5 years after discovering the affair, I'm 39, married to Catherine for 2 years, promoted to Vice President of Operations, leading a team of 50 people across 3 states, living a life built on honesty and mutual respect. Sometimes people ask if I regret the public confrontation, if I think I should have handled Melissa and Derek's termination more privately, more discreetly. My answer, no. Because private handling would have protected them from consequences while leaving me to deal with the professional fallout alone. It would have allowed the workplace gossip to continue, allowed my team to avoid accountability for their complicity, allowed Melissa and Derek to control the narrative. The public exposure was harsh, but it was also truthful. It showed everyone involved that actions have consequences, that betrayal doesn't get protected by discretion, and that humiliating someone at their workplace means facing humiliation in return. Melissa learned that conducting an affair at your spouse's workplace destroys more than just a marriage. It destroys credibility, relationships, and future opportunities. Derek learned that sleeping with your manager's wife isn't just an ethical violation, it's career suicide. And my team learned that witnessing wrongdoing and staying silent makes you complicit in the harm it causes. 7 years after that terrible Thursday when I discovered the affair, the pain has mostly faded. I think about it occasionally. Usually when someone asks about my first marriage, but it doesn't define me anymore. What defines me is what I built afterward. The career success, the honest marriage with Catherine, the integrity I maintained while handling an impossible situation. Everyone at my company knew my wife was sleeping with my coworker except me. They gossiped about it in group chats. They pitied me at the coffee machine. They watched my humiliation unfold and said nothing. But when I finally discovered the truth, I made sure they all watched as the consequences unfolded just as publicly. And in doing so, I reclaimed the dignity and respect they'd quietly stripped away while I was too trusting to see what was right in front of me.